Hello everyone, and welcome to Sewer Infiltration to Asset Rehabilitation, an end-to-end roadmap for action webinar. I'm Sean Taylor. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to welcome and encourage you to engage with our experts today by using the Q&A box located in the right corner of your GoToWebinar interface. We will try to answer as many questions as possible during the last 15 minutes. Please note that all phone lines will be muted during the webinar. Later, we will send an email with a link to watch the webinar on demand. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers. David Topman, Vice President of Asset Management at Innovyze, Chuck Hansen, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at Electro Scan, and Tim Medeiros, Systems Engineer at Innovyze. David Topman is the Vice President of Asset Management for Innovyze, providing strategic direction for infrastructure systems management across the entire Innovyze product line. He has been in the water industry just under 40 years and has applied geospatial technology to business process optimization, project analytics, and full lifecycle infrastructure management for over 30 years. Prior to Innovyze, he was the Global Water Industry Manager for Esri and served as the Asset Manager for Colorado Springs Utilities, one of the largest municipally owned for-service utilities in the USA. His state government service included water quality and water rights adjudications. He is a member of the American Water Works Association and the American Society of Civil Engineers. As an officer in the American Society of Engineers, he holds the title of Past President of the Utility Engineering and Surveying Institute. Chuck Hansen is the Chairman and CEO of Sacramento-based Electro Scan Incorporated, and a former chair of ASTM F36-20, overseeing standards for inspection and renewal of water and wastewater infrastructure. An original founder of Hansen Information Technologies in 1983, Chuck had over 1 million CCTV reports in Hansen databases from over a dozen different international rating standards when he sold Hansen in 2007. Chuck received his BSc from UC Berkeley and MBA from UCLA. Tim Medeiros is a system engineer at Innovyze. He joined Innovyze in July 2016 after completing his master's with research in hydrology and industrial water treatment. With Innovyze, Tim has spent time as a member of the support and technical service team, as well as the sales team. He has worked extensively with Innovyze's asset management software and has assisted in training, implementation, and support with hundreds of Innovyze customers around the world. David, I will hand it off to you now.
Yeah, hey, thanks, John. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending upon which side of the United States you're joining us or even globally. As Sean said, my name's David Topman, Vice President of Asset Management here at Innovyze. And I hope everyone's staying safe and staying at home, kind of during this unprecedented time. We at Innovyze, we're all working from home now and still answering telephone calls and making calls and using webinars like today's, to communicate our exciting story on how we are leveraging Innovyze technologies to bring on new users and new solutions. Today we're excited to showcase one of our newest partners, Electro Scan Inc., and their founder and CEO, Chuck, who I've known for quite some time. He's here with us today to talk about integrating their data in with the Innovyze platform. And actually, before I turn it over to Chuck, I'd like to start off with a polling question about our topic today. Sean, can you launch our first poll, please?
Thank you, David. And our first question here, do you currently have an active I&I mitigation program? Our responses are yes, we are happy with our current program. Yes, and we are seeing great results with Electro Scan. Yes, but mitigation could be better. No, we do not and would like to learn more. And finally, don't know or I&I is not an issue. We'll leave the polls open for about 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
Yeah, so our topic today is definitely about I&I leakage and infiltration and inflow, just all the different aspects, which those effectively are indicators of condition of your mains. but it's also something you don't want excessive I&I because you don't need to treat, rainwater, so to speak. So let's see, what are those results? All right.
Fantastic. Yeah, 30% of you said yes, but mitigation could be better. Another 30% responded with no, we do not and would like to learn more. 22% said don't know or I&I is not an issue. 11% responded with yes, we are happy with our current program. And finally, 8% said yes, and we are seeing great results with Electro Scan.
All right. Well, yeah. Hey, thanks, Sean. That some interesting results. And kind of all over the board. I'm glad to see folks have active I&I programs. That's really important. And obviously our job here is to help you with those results and hopefully get the most effectiveness out of, if you will, out of your mitigation program. So. Chuck, what do you think about those polls?
Hey, David, thanks for having me. I think the poll says it all. I think whether it's from climate change or the type of rehabilitation is not really delivering kind of what it needs to be. I think taking a look at how we mitigate infiltration, I think is going to be that's why we're here.
Yeah. So. I think Sean kind of definitely spilled the beans in the intro there. So you are the one and only Chuck Hansen from Hansen Software.
Yeah, that's it. I tried to retire after 2007 and selling the company, but I guess I just wasn't through with this wonderful industry that we're all in.
Well. Glad to have you back, and welcome to the Innovyze family of partners.
Great, thanks.
So, well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just look. One of the things I really liked, I was chasing after Paul Boulos for years, trying to be part of that family. So it's good to be part of that, and having our data inside the Innovyze platform, so that there's a whole decision tree that I don't have to write for software. So you're doing me a huge favor having such a great product to work with.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And clearly you're giving our users, our customers, just a completely new viewpoint, for them to kind of take a look at condition and truth be told, having you guys in there, it's helping us. Now we can compare and contrast data and actually start to understand what you've been talking about all along about effectiveness. So thrilled to have it. Kind of in that regards, many of our longtime users of InfoMaster, and which is now Info Asset Planner, they've relied on CCTV data for condition assessment of their sewer mains. I mean, for years, for decades. Electro Scan doesn't really eliminate that CCTV inspection, right? I mean, Electro Scan and FEL testing, isn't that that's an additional piece of information to make decisions about, right?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it does eliminate CCTV, especially when you're looking to do three things: hunt for infiltration, where the source is, very focused on that. Measuring the water tightness of a lot of the trenchless pipes that we've got out there, especially cured in place pipe, and then also determining lateral reinstatements and making sure that they don't leak more than they did before we rehab them. So I think what we're going to see today is you're going to see a lot of overwhelming data of why that is a very specialized thing. So TV still has a lot of useful applications: collapses, looking at construction debris, fats, oils, and greases, protruding laterals, roots. It's great, but when it comes to finding where the leaks are and infiltration, not really the best tool to use for investigation.
So, when we look at condition, we always try to establish a baseline. Is FEL kind of on top of that baseline or in place of that baseline?
Yeah, it's almost using, you've got to use the right tool for the right job. When I was sitting on the ASTM committee overseeing new inspection devices, we approved both of the laser profiling. We approve the acoustic. So it's really using the right tool for the right job. You wouldn't use a hammer when you need a torque wrench. So, today we're going to take a look at some of the examples for that, how a FEL compares to CCTV and looking for infiltration. A big thing is looking at cracks and joints. If I'm looking at a TV and the crack, if I can't tell whether it's a superficial crack or a crack that goes through the pipe, I'm going to have trouble deciding how that's going to be treated in my decision curve. The same thing goes with a joint. If I know whether that joint leaks or not, does water flow through that bell and spigot, I'm going to want to look at that too. So it really has everything to do with how we're going to design that next generation decision tool to make the right decision and fix the pipe and have a feedback loop to know we're doing the right job.
Yeah. Well, and doesn't that kind of get at the root of the problem? I mean, one of the things that we do with info asset planners, we prescribe a rehabilitation program, but it's very much based upon that input data, right? So there's almost a cascade effect of once we understand what data we're trying to assess, how that comes out to the recommended rehabilitation, right? Like you say, it's that full circle.
Yeah. It's I hate to use the 70s terminology. It's garbage in, garbage out. So and look, I know you've 40 years in the industry. Folks don't know. I actually helped do the first mainframe sewer work order application in the 70s. So I've had a lot of work done, as you have. I'm 64, so we've both been at this for a lot of years. So there's going to be new things, and really the challenge for the industry is how do you integrate those new things as we go forward.
Yeah, don't make me get my slide rule out.
Yeah. So
I guess what comes into part of, I think, what you'll be talking about too is we kind of have to we have the inspection information. Our decision trees help prescribe recommended rehabilitation, but once we do the rehab, there's also kind of a contractor component, right? When they after the rehab, you kind of have to inspect that the rehab is actually what you plan for, designed for, paid for actually, and so you're expecting to get that delivered result. Thoughts about that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think making sure I think the buzzwords today are governance, stewardship of the asset, and I think after cities kind of get to kind of what we're combining together, I think they're going to want to use Innovyze as the single platform for that feedback loop, that QA/QC, to make sure that they've not only done the right rehab, but have actually gotten the expected result and the rehabilitation effectiveness out of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been kind of looking at, clearly looking at the data, looking at CCTV, looking at the FEL, and as you kind of mentioned, there's just certain codes that stand out, like TFA, factory actives, right? That's clearly a CCTV thing, but making sure the visual piece is different than the actual kind of the integrity piece, right? I mean, it's not like those things leak or anything, or even our operations folks doing maintenance affect those, right? I mean, that never happens.
Yeah, no, never. I can't. We might see a little bit of that in the coming slides here. So we'll highlight that as it comes up.
Well, take it away. It's your show.
Well, I think what we've seen is you're seeing now, I think, the typical roadmap of infiltration that we've done a lot of years. I cut my teeth on the big Houston project. The first time they were up on EPA consent decree back in the 90s, we did 60,000+ manhole inspections, and then we did smoke testing and dye flood testing, TVing all the information, coming up with that data, doing the expert system, and that was back when lining was done by the family businesses like Will Naylor and Jim Witt with Instituform Gulf South, and coming up with that, and then actually doing that and seeing how effectively that was done. And there really hasn't been that much of a reason to change the way we've been doing things. The problem with that is we get the same old thinking. It gives us the same old results for that. Unless of course you've been doing all this and you're still getting the same answer in the field. And you just take a couple of examples. Whether you're a small city that's got a 3 MGD average plant that doubles during a wet weather event, or you're hitting 600 MGD on an average day that's a 300 MGD as the average. So I think we're seeing persistent levels of infiltration. It's anybody's opinion why we're seeing those things, but it's now kind of a driver of what we're looking for. And I kind of call it the perfect storm. You know, as we look at the drivers today, I think we're gonna just talk a little bit about each of these just for housekeeping. We may go quickly through these things. Email us, David or myself. We'll be happy to give you copies of the complete slide stack, but we're going to go through each one of these and throw in a poll as we go in. Talking about the elephant in the room, COVID-19. Again, I've been around a while with David. I've never seen the tragedy and just the shocking results that COVID has given us. So we heard yesterday. Now more deaths than the Vietnam War. So that's just it's just implausible. It escapes you know, really kind of thinking about the impact of those things. Understand that tomorrow new jobless records are going to come in. We could very well hit top 30 million. Last week it was 26 million. So just a number of things that are happening. A couple of weeks ago I was on. I'm taking some other courses down at Stanford. So two of my favorite professors, Bob Sutton and Huggy Rao, were giving a Stanford online thing. They actually had 110 countries on there, and it was interesting. One of the things they talked about was this is actually a time, even though it's such a trying time, and the topic was how to be a good boss. It was really asking yourself as a boss or a team leader, what are we doing? What are we doing over and over that we should stop doing? And really, I think now is coming up with, we ought to stop doing TV inspection if it doesn't give us the right answers, or it's not giving us the information that we need. Again, TV, a great application when the problem is obvious. Using this kind of COVID-19 illustration, this is what we call a true positive. I see a problem, I can write down the problem. The problem really comes when it's not so obvious. And this is really the other 90% of your system. So, and I picked these examples all because whether the camera is underwater or we've got a joint, every one of these were found to have major leaks. This is what's called a false negative. So if we pass by and give a clean bill of health for a joint that is actually leaking, that data going into a decision tree may not be the right thing that we look at, and it really kind of makes sense. But if we just take a look at that one example that I talked about earlier, where cracks with video, very tough to tell in the upper right hand corner, is that a superficial crack or is that crack go all the way through the pipe wall? If I had a laser look at that, lasers typically will look at ovality of the pipe. That's good information to use. But it can't tell whether that crack goes through the pipe wall. Sonar, is going to tell me what the debris field is, but again, it's not going to tell me where the leak is for that. And it really comes down to just how these assets are constructed and the reason for this. It's obvious why we can't get that information from a visual inspection tool, because we would have to stop at each joint, pan, tilt, and zoom, just to capture maybe 10% of that bell and spigot. We can't really look up into that bell and spigot and make that 90-degree turn to visually see, is there a pathway for water to come in or come out of the pipe? So having that kind of information, passing a joint that we shouldn't, really is going to be problematic. And it actually gets worse. Here's a typical liner. The dye is just dripping directly into the beaker. TV passes this like it does so many. TV inspection, video inspection does not have the capability of really examining the permeability. Can we have water go through that? And whether they're felt liners or whether it's a UV cured fiberglass, we definitely have that issue going on. So the technology that kind of got me back in the business was to look for an alternative. How could we really take the visual work that we'd had and kind of move that forward and get a couple of standards going in there? And so in looking at how we force electric current in, really it's a process of just finding where the holes are. We calculate the size of the hole, and through calculus we'll determine an estimated GPM on that. So it's really the science of low voltage conductivity, and it's really the first true positive machine intelligent that gives us an unbiased look at 360 degrees of a pipe. The other good news is what it does for CIPP. Here you've got just this low voltage current that in one spot is seeing if current passes through the liner. If there's no current that's able to pass, that's a good liner. If I'm conducting electricity, which I shouldn't, it's a one-to-one correlation of electrical flow versus water flow. It happens every time. It's just the science of low voltage electrical current. I'm going to have a bad CIPP. What Electro Scan essentially has done is it has adapted this so it works at a 360-degree pipe for the full length. And then we hit on connections, tap connections. And this is where it's almost more important to find and confirm that the tap connection has no leakage. Don't get me started into the laterals. You know, that's the pipe that goes from the main onto the service connection. I know there's a raging debate on, gee, this is where we have the infiltration coming from. Sorry, but the initial readings that we've done over the last 10 years shows that these laterals really aren't the problem. We've got the low-hanging fruit. We've found the inflow component of this by having those drain pipes that are connected to the sewers and the missing drain caps. I'm talking about right at the connection. And if we find a tap connection that doesn't have a leak, we're going to want to make sure that it doesn't leak after rehab. The safety is always an issue. You know, you take a look at a lightning bolt that comes down. A single lightning bolt is about 5 billion joules of energy that come down. That all dissipates within about 30 feet. Compare that to Electro Scan with about 6 AA batteries. That will dissipate in about 30 inches. So the chances of having it follow water all the way up just doesn't exist. It's scientifically an impossibility.
Yeah, at Colorado Springs, electric and water usually didn't mix. So
yeah, that's right.
Good to know. Good to know.
But here's what we want to take a look at is when we're coming back and when we're having to open up those laterals for relining. And if you take a look at the video on the left, we're chewing up this thing pretty much over the last 40 years that we've been reopening these things. Some of these have not been as precise as possible. And if you look at the post-lined pipes below it and the annular space, we're still having the same amount of water percolate down through the hose pipe, hitting that shrunken inner lined pipe through that annular space. So it's no surprise it comes right through. So if I'm actually making a bigger hole, then I can actually find CIPP today now leaking more, even if I've eliminated all of the joint leakage. I've made bigger holes at all the laterals. If I've got a lot of laterals in the pipe, I'm going to have a problem. So, you know, kind of ending this section on a Maynard Keynes quote, the difficulty lies not in new ideas, but escaping from the older ones. It's really time to look at that.
And this brings us to our next polling question. Has CCTV been your only sewer condition asset assessment tool? Our first response is yes, we only use CCTV and are pleased with the results. Yes, but we are interested in using FEL. No, we actually use CCTV and FEL. No, we use a different inspection methodology. And finally, don't know or have nothing at all. Leave the polls open here for another 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious out there who has nothing at all, actually, you know.
Well, you know, I mean, we have about 100 Electro Scan units out there. I think there are at least 25,000 plus TV rigs. Plus, we've got a lot of manual ones. So it's you know, it's interesting to see what we'll get.
Okay.
And here are the results. Yeah, 38% said yes, but we are interested in using FEL. Another 22% said yes, we only use CCTV and are pleased with the results. 14% said no, we actually use CCTV and FEL. 13% said don't know or have nothing at all. And finally, 12% responded with no. We use a different inspection methodology. Thank you.
And for those that use something different altogether, you know, please drop me a line, or Chuck and I would love to understand what's being used there in the industry. So,
absolutely. Kind of going on to the second part in here, and it really talks about you know, the infiltration getting worse, not better. You know, we've got this pandemic. It almost reminds me, I mean, today it's almost like the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We've got pandemic, we've got death, we've got interruption of our food supply, we've got flooding, and of all things, wet weather infiltration into sewer is one of the top causes for that. So as the sewers fill up, they'll fill up the basement and go on. And what we're actually finding is weather is getting wetter, not drier. And here's an interesting chart that I came over the last 100 years, or the years from 1900 to 2000 in Philadelphia, and then taking a look at the rainfall from 2000 to 2020. It's been night and day. And the other thing that we're finding is that it takes very little rainfall. In this case, we go back to Labor Day last year in Philadelphia near the airport. We had less than a quarter of an inch, causing a 9 times flow at the treatment plant. So, and this is not just a U.S. A problem. You know, in places where you would never think you'd have a problem like this, with Abu Dhabi, Dubai. Here's a picture of Doha in Qatar. I was in the city when we had just a brief rainfall, and the streets were completely flooded on here. So it doesn't take much today to actually cause those issues. Rich Cummings at Hillsborough, I don't know if Rich is on the call. Hi, Rich. Was on the call. We worked with Rich, kind of you know, looking at FEL for about 30 miles in this area. Surprise, surprise, Innovyze and Inflow Asset Planner was a big a part of our investigation for that data. But it also looked at combining CCTV data as well. There was about 33,000 feet that we compared it to, and we looked at defects, and we looked at ours. And we saw, yeah, that's the number. 5 defects called out for TV for this 33,000 feet compared to FEL. On sewer mains for the same 33,000 feet. If we take every category that could be influenced by infiltration, so looking at joints, cracks, fissures, at liners, the taps, roots, only 14. Now, granted, the majority of these pipes were plastic pipe. That's a little bit difficult for CCTV, but a very dramatic look at that. But if we just take a look at a single pipe comparison, where we would see TV call out a bad tap on one of the lines, and we would compare that to FEL in looking at the other taps that were there. So not only do we need to know where the bad taps are, but where good taps are, so that when we rehab this line, we've got a true baseline to know what we want to reduce, what we want to kind of get rid of. And this is not just an American thing. It's as I've watched the AMPs over in Europe, over in the UK, we just started AMP7. AMP7 is no joke. I was fortunate enough, David and I were over in the Innovyze user conference in Birmingham, and there was fright on some of the speakers, just looking at some of the requirements that Ofwat is requiring off these things. And I'm adding this in just because I think it's an agency we have to watch. It's probably one of the best run agencies around down in Australia with Sydney Water. But it's amazing to see how they have now taken a regional approach. They have been working hard almost the last, I think they're 4 months out of 6 months. They're going to be, I believe, starting July 1, having these regional consortiums, these third parties now that will be taking over this. And it's seeing how they're looking at what the utility is expecting from a CapEx and how that market is going to supply it. So I think we're going to have a lot of good examples of that. And again, I just want to close kind of this section out by saying that there's, again, a lot of good uses for CCTV. I think we're going to see TV change, and we're already seeing a change in getting added to jet hoses so that we can actually jet up, take the camera off, and actually jet down, right back down with a Electro Scan fail unit. So we can kind of look at that. We make sure there's no obstructions. We make sure there's no risk in there. The number one thing I like about TV and where AI can really help, and it helps now, is where are the taps? Greatest way to update my GIS. So in this section, I'm just going to finish off by the famous Steve Jobs saying, you've got to have a wrong that you want to right, otherwise you're not going to have the perseverance to stick it through. And trying to kind of get a hold on some of the infiltration, I think, is where we want to be.
Great. And that brings us to our next polling question. Are you using CIPP as a rehabilitation solution? Responses are yes, we use CIPP and are happy with the results. Yes, but aren't meeting our I&I reduction goals. No, we use a different trenchless technology. No, we dig and replace. And finally, don't know. We'll leave the polls open for about 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
So I was talking to, as we answered the question here, I was talking to Henry Gregory, who I think spent $1 billion on CIPP in Houston. And I definitely had an opinion on what they did right and maybe what they could have done a better job doing coming up on this next series of consent decrees that we may be under. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit next.
And yeah, it looks like we had some great responses here. So 46% of you said yes, we use CIPP and are happy with the results. 31% said yes, but aren't meeting our I&I reduction goals. 11% responded with don't know. 8% said no, we use a different trenchless technology. And finally, 5% said no, we dig and replace. Thank you.
Yeah. Great, and kind of our third section, we'll just kind of blast through this a little bit. The CIPP, very common. It's been around for forever and a day, since the 70s when it first came out of the UK. That's how long. Yeah, Colorado Springs, a big user for that, as do a lot of people. And I've just got to say that the problem is new CIPP liners can and do frequently leak. Here's a picture of a new pipe in Virginia. And you can see those 3 telltale infiltration stains where the water's already seeping through. And whether they're categorized, I know that we've got some call-outs. Unfortunately, the majority of call-outs we see after a post-CIPP really has been all zeros. And this is one of my favorites. I call this 70-30. This is actually a video of 70 leaks, 70 pinhole leaks. And look carefully, you can see the infiltration stains in many of the cases. 70 infiltration stains, leaks into 30 feet of new pipe. This pipe is 30 days old. So the chances of these things putting in is a real definite thing. And then as we look at the lateral connections, we're now seeing kind of the best and brightest engineering firms deliver customer heat maps. What do we mean by that? Well, we take a look at the middle map. We've actually got some poke and hope here. These are, hey, we didn't know where the lateral is. We're going to poke into it. Many of these were grouted, and we could not only either see visual water through, we saw fell leaks that had it. 0 CCTV. So this heat map you see on the right-hand side, though, is actually a great example of what did the tap leak before CIPP. And you see where the check mark is, the deepest red is where we had 0 leakage on a lateral before CIPP, but yet after CIPP, we actually had issues. And again, having that rotating blade in a 6 to 8 inch, 10-inch pipe, what could possibly go wrong? And so, that's an issue we have to take a look at. And we are now looking at, well, if we do have those things, what do we let go? How long should we keep that pipe? So we're now coming up with new definitions through the help of some early adopters for Electro Scan, like in Roseville. We're taking a look at looking at once a year and seeing what is the impact of those early identified pinholes. What is the impact of wet weather events, how those pinholes are getting bigger over the time. So here you see 2 scans, 643 days. Notice how the major scans are precisely located at the same location, 600 days. This is just the benefit of science. This is just what the benefit of machine technology does for you. But now we have these other creeping effects of problems in the ladder that we saw before. And we're seeing those all over the world. Here's something from Sweden. We're now seeing some of the papers coming in at some of the international conferences, 25 liners showing a 66% failure rate. And this is not just for liners. We've actually been taking a look at new clay pipe. And when I say new clay pipe, I mean the ones with gasketed ends, whether it's an open end or a bell and spigot, and taking a look at those. And I'm not so sure, seeing some of the defects I read on new clay pipe, I'm not so sure as some of the old clay pipe that we're now seeing. I've got to wait until I have a couple of million feet of new. I'm almost convinced that many of the bad clay pipe we're seeing now probably look that way within a week that they were put in. Because we're now finding out people that are actually putting in clay pipe today, fine at pressure tests, it's fine when they actually install it. When they cover it with dirt, it has trouble passing a leak test, and so we're called in. Also, Barbara, I don't know if you're on the phone. Hi there, Barbara. Barbara's up in Ontario. Very interesting to your study on unacceptable II readings in new subdivisions just found with flow monitoring after these subdivisions were put in. So I think we're going to see a lot of QA/QC. The need to have that feedback loop, I think, has never been greater. So when we leave this thought with this section with the definition of Einstein, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, is kind of where we've been with the technologies. One more section to go.
Got my man Einstein in the back there.
Okay, yeah. Sean, we got another poll question.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chuck. And that brings us to our next polling question. Who certifies your new and rehabilitated pipes as leak-free? Our responses are outside engineering firm, municipal field crews, independent contractor, and finally, contractor that installs the new pipe also tests the pipe. We'll leave the polls open for 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
Not to influence, that should be, next year we're going to have Innovyze, Info Asset Planner on that list. So David, does Innovyze have any other API, application programming interface directly into a cloud database other than Electro Scan and Critical Sewer? Do you have any other APIs with any other vendor today?
On the CMMS side, yes, we do.
Okay.
So connecting to enterprise asset management systems, we do. But yeah,
okay.
we're the door is open for our partnering program, and we're really excited to have new innovative technologies come into our data feeds.
And
well, that's great. And that, I'm sorry, Sean.
Oh, no, you're okay. Just to share the results here, 58% of you said contractor that installs the new pipe also tests the pipe. 18% said outside engineering firm, 14% municipal field crews, and finally 10% independent contractor. Thank you.
Interesting.
Well, look, the last thing has to be Innovyze Electro Scan because that's where we're at here. But it brings up this feedback loop. How do you do that? And I think having integration into your CMMS and to be able to have all of that data in one place now, I think to influence a decision, I think we want to start influencing the decision while rehab crews are still mobilized out in the field. I think the day that we have to wait 6 months or a year, or wait for flow monitoring data for 2 years to get a similar event, I think those days are over. And I think having this real-time connection to our database with Innovyze, I think is the right way to go. And really what it's doing is what we're finding in a lot of case studies is we're finding just using the power of Innovyze and Info Asset Planner, where one sections would be if we just used CCT to pick the rehab area, if we just look at a hydraulic assessment only, like what Fell reads from machine, we're now looking at a totally different basis. And the ability to come up with leaks, looking at those things as a low-hanging fruit, we can ask the question, well, look, if we want to spend the dollars, and our goal is 80% reduction in our infiltration, so we basically want to take our worst pipes, work on those first until we run out of money, until we hit that time. That will give us the biggest bang for the buck. So as we kind of finish this section here, and as we look at that process, we certainly don't want to have at the end of this. This is an actual CCTV report by certified operators, 0 grades, filled with poke and hope. They did at least put in miscellaneous general observation, those MGOs that are out there. Nothing went into the calculator, and so easily these problems that when you really look at these things can be off the radar. And if you don't have the time, if you aren't looking at the video, like I love to do, I watch TV every day, so I still like it. It's going to be a problem. So really now what we're judged is, are we going to wait until we get a flow monitoring result? We do a lot of things with the smart covers, and flow meters are out there. A lot of companies that offer this. We have now been calibrated to, at least in our case, ISCO flow meters. But do we want to wait a year and a half, or with tools like this, can we actually get same day results within hours? Can we have data uploaded right after a test has been made in the field, and have my Innovyze asset planner personnel look at that data and see what we had before, see what the flow is after, and see what that reduction is while those crews are still out there, so that we can make that part of the contract. So we're glad to be here. Of course, we've been doing a lot of work in the sewer side of the shop. No secret, we have been doing projects in pressurized pipe, and that's not just in force main, but also water pipes as well. This is where we're going to be taking Electro Scan, acoustic, CCTV. Again, big fan of this, especially to help me navigate through those. Rumor has it, all the leaks go out, and pressure, so we can do that. So, and I think a very powerful next step, get familiar with the sewer side, and then you'll have your Innovyze asset tool set there, ready and waiting as you move forward.
Awesome.
So Sean, I'll kick it back to you.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Do you see benefits in adopting FEL? Our responses are yes, we already use FEL. Yes, we've learned a lot and would like to be connected or contacted. Not yet, let me think about it. And finally, not really. We plan to stay with what we have. We'll leave the polls open for about 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
Well, Chuck, you've definitely given us some things to think about for sure. So I'm a big fan of innovative, disruptive technologies, forcing us old guys to kind of think things through differently.
Well, and here's the other thing. I think we've made, you and I collectively probably, I don't know if we've made all the mistakes, but in just seeing kind of what we've done for these things, I think it's a good next step for where we are in the industry.
And it looks like 47% of you said not yet. Let me think about it. 22% said yes, we've learned a lot and would like to be contacted. 22% said yes, we already use FEL. And finally, 10% said not really. We plan to stay with what we have. Thank you.
Well, we I was gonna say, we are a cautious industry, right? Many times, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know. And but it's always good to keep our minds open.
Absolutely.
All right. I think Tim, you're gonna show us some of this in action.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Chuck and David, for kind of setting the stage and giving a lot of great information on the use of FEL technology and Info Asset Planner as well. So at this point, yeah, I'd just like to show all of that kind of in action here. So let's see. Yeah, so just for anyone who's not familiar with Info Asset Planner, there we go. Info Asset Planner is an asset management tool by Innovyze, and just a couple slides here before we jump into the data to give people out there kind of the main idea behind the purpose of the software and its core workflows. The main idea behind Info Asset Planner is you've got all of this data you're using for linear networks. Again, GIS information has been mentioned already, hydraulic modeling results. Innovyze is definitely known for that sewer storm flood or distribution modeling and hydraulic modeling information. Bringing that information in as well as work orders and inspections, something like Hansen databases, CityWorks, Lucity, all these different CMMS work order systems, pipe inspection data. And so today we're really talking about Electro Scan and that FEL technology and integrating that information into Info Asset Planner. But then any other database information, you know, if you've got one-offs in Excel or Access databases, the idea is you want to bring all this information together to make better decisions. We're all making decisions on capital improvement project planning, where to inspect, where our operation and maintenance dollars should go. But if we can get all this information in one spot, we can make better decisions. It's the idea. Plus, Info Asset Planner really, again, takes your CMMS, your asset management, kind of to the next level, right? Your standard CMMS system is great at organizing data, getting it all tied into one spot, filling all those data gaps. But then the question is, well, what do you do with it once you have all this data organized in one framework? So that's where Info Asset Planner takes your asset management plan to the next level and says, you know, this is the optimal, this is what comes next, if you will. After gathering all this information, this is what we do with it, and then feed that back into your CMMS database there. So with that, I will leave the slides here for a second. And here we are within Info Asset Planner. And right now on my screen, you can see I've got a couple of pipes here on the map. And so both of these pipes have been inspected by Electro Scan data. And what we've done is we have brought this Electro Scan FEL data from critical sewers into your GIS. This is really one of the first benefits of this partnership is we're able to directly integrate. We mentioned that REST API connection. We're able to directly take that data that's being stored in critical sewers, offsite and integrate it in with your database of record a lot of times, that GIS information. So this is the kind of user ID and token you would use, and you'll see this later when I bring in new FEL information to my Info Asset Planner database. Well, basically what we're seeing here is the condition assessment window, which traditionally has been used to kind of visualize that CCTV information. In the case that you want to really reduce infiltration and that INI, you might be bringing in FEL data, and so you can see this FEL information on the pipe. You know, you can query these defects, so you're maybe only seeing those greatest leaks here. So I'm only seeing my leaks, you know, 7.07 GPM, 10 GPM, those larger leaks. Or if I wanted to, I could see, you know, all the smaller detailed leaks on that pipe. That same kind of scan graph that Chuck has been showing, this is also able to be completely brought into Info Asset Planner. So again, the idea is not only do you have access to this information on critical sewers and on the cloud, but it's integrated into your GIS as well in your Info Asset Planner database. So once this information is within Info Asset Planner, again, you can leverage it to use all the analytical tools and functions that our current customers and future users perhaps know and love within Info Asset Planner. This includes things like the consequences and likelihood of failure parameters, and if you wanted to use that fell electroscan information to further inform your risk analysis here. So in this case here, I'm looking at a likelihood of failure generated from or brought in from my Electroscan database here. So here I'm looking at that approximate flow for each of my pipes from that Electroscan information and applying a likelihood of failure, if that pipe has more leaks versus fewer leaks, depending on the flow and the results from that particular pipe. So that's just one example of how we can use it in the risk analysis tool. But beyond that, these decision trees within Info Asset Planner are really at the core of, again, answering that question. Great, we've gathered all this data, we've put it into GIS, it's in our Esri environment within and Info Asset Planner that our organization is really comfortable with. Now, again, what comes next? So here's an example of a decision tree that is actually looking at a lot of Electroscan information. So again, here's our survey import. Instead of referencing CCTV in here, we can simply say, pull in my Electroscan information. If we look at this particular decision tree, maximize this here. Now we've got all our pipes here starting at start. And again, just like a standard decision tree within Info Asset Planner, we start asking our data questions, right? So we're asking, did it have an Electroscan survey done on it? If it did, great. Let's look at all those results that we pulled in from critical sewers. What's the length of defects? What's the gravity kind of those defects? Are they large? Are they small? What's the average GPM kind of value that was measured by Electroscan, and determine maybe we need a liner or just replace that pipe as a whole. If it doesn't have Electroscan information, which can certainly be the case, maybe we're using the risk analysis to prioritize where should we be Electroscanning next to get the most bang for our buck. Right, so since Electroscan is really looking at that I&I, we're really looking at the hydraulics of that pipe, maybe we want to be prioritizing Electroscan in particularly kind of low-lying areas where the water table is higher, where we might be having more I&I, and that's a little bit more important to us. So here I've put in Electroscan at low elevation, medium, and high elevations in here. And so we can see what these results look like at the end of our decision tree. So if we open up the results from that particular decision tree in Info Asset Planner, I can get my rehab summary report down here. And if I sort some of these, I can see I have a number of Electroscan kind of suggestions for my pipes that come with cost information that we can generate and apply. I have a number of these that say, Electroscan, this pipe is low elevation. So maybe if I wanted to kind of prioritize these pipes in the Electroscan on these low elevations ahead of time, I could simply select these, add these to my map selection here, again, leveraging the power of kind of Esri and GIS here. And I minimize some windows here. We can easily kind of see that these particular pipes are by the river here. So again, that might be an area that has higher water table, more I&I, and so we could make kind of a project out of the pipes that were suggested for Electroscan here, and again, higher return on investment since they are in that kind of low-lying area. And again, because we're working in GIS, because Info Asset Planner is so tightly integrated, in this example here, I'm simply using my manhole or pipe invert elevations to find these low-lying areas, but you can imagine you could use background GIS and start to pull in all your data to really find these low-lying and best areas that you might be Electroscanning. All right. Last thing, so say we do this rehab, right? And we talk about, Chuck mentioned, kind of being able to review on-site. So say we do that. We come out, we Electroscan that pipe, maybe then we say, okay, to get the reduction we want, let's say we want 85% reduction of I&I on that particular pipe. We want to check that. We want to make sure the contractor who did the lining actually was able to hit that 85% goal. So what Chuck's mentioning when he says, we could use Info Asset Planner as this tool to really check that that's actually occurring, is if I come back up here and I have my pipe that's been Electroscanned, and maybe it's been lined now, but I've done a post Electroscan on it. Say I import, I again ping my critical sewers database, I say import. I've now started importing those new post inspections, so those are now imported. If I run that same wizard in Info Asset Planner, I'm taking this Electro Scan information, actually, again, tying it to my GIS by running it through the wizard, so that now when I click on this pipe, I can review and kind of see, again, now I've got 2 inspections on this pipe. It's going to bring up the most recent inspection here for this particular pipe. And so if I look at the defect view, I can see on this pipe, great, maybe I hit that reduction. I can see I can kind of compare both inspections on this particular pipe. So I can see the pre, was very busy, had very many defects, and I can see the post. This contractor, did a great job here. However, maybe on the second pipe, I can pull reports from an Info Asset Planner, and I can see something, like the data we're seeing here at the bottom, where I've got my 2 pipes, and one of them hit that reduction, actually got to 99% reduction, but the other only made it to 82%. So on site there, as quickly as I've been just showing it right now, you can bring in that information and actually check that reduction hit what you were looking for very quickly. All right. And so again, where we're seeing Electro Scan used, I guess we got one more polling question over to you, Sean, before I go into an actual case study where we've seen this.
Great, thank you, Tim. And finally, do you have a prescriptive, risk-based decision tool for rehabilitation planning? Our responses are yes, we use Info Asset Planner from Innovyze. Yes, we use a different COTS tool. Yes, we use spreadsheets. No, we do not have a tool and probably should. Finally, don't know. We'll leave the polls open for about 30 seconds and then share the results. Thank you.
I'm guessing a huge amount of spreadsheets out there, just a guess.
It's a reliable tool.
Nothing like the power of GIS, though.
All right, and 29% responded with yes, we use Info Asset Planner from Innovyze. 25% said no, we do not have a tool and probably should. 17% said yes, we use spreadsheets. 16% yes, we use a different COTS tool. And finally, 13% said don't know. Thank you.
Good to know.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for everyone for those responses. So again, kind of a way we've seen this put into action, again, using Info Asset Planner and Electro Scan and putting these together. Chuck mentioned earlier, Sydney Water. This is a video, short video, directly from kind of their implementation and pilot project with these 2 softwares. So you can see, again, just as I was showing the survey on their, actual pipe, you can see all of the Electro Scan information, which was brought in there. And again, you can go back and forth between that 3D view of the pipe, even jump to media. So again, you can store all of your inspection, CCTV, and Electro Scan within Info Asset Planner. And again, just a live case study kind of how we can take this Electro Scan information and start to put it in kind of a decision tree format here. So again, we're looking at a separate Electro Scan inspection on another pipe here. And let's see. On this one, sorry, excuse me. And you'll see that this decision tree being shown, kind of created here using that Electro Scan information. All right, so this is directly from Sydney Water Project. I know you were working on, Chuck, with our folks down there from Innovyze in Australia. So great success. So this is kind of the first effort, kind of putting these technologies together, using some of these features we just came out with in Info Asset Planner. I've been under development for a while, so really looking forward to seeing this continue to grow. And be realized elsewhere as well. As kind of this is the optimal tool for kind of looking at reducing that I&I.
the guys, the Innovyze guys down at City Water, Terry Bork and the other folks were just fantastic assistants to us, and looking at the data and presenting that. I think it's just a wonderful user interface. I think that Innovyze has created.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tim. Great to see that in action. Some really good stuff there. We're at the top of the hour. We have actually quite a few questions been rolling in. We will get to every single one of them. We may not have time this morning for this, but we will answer every single one. Part of the best part of these webinars. But looking at the questions, and Tim, you're kind of showing prioritization based on kind of the highest GPMs. Chuck, there's so many parameters that affect, the soil, the pipe material, all these conditions. There's certain assumptions of FEL. It almost seems like we're, finding almost too many leaks, right? Is it overestimating? So, would you always trust the highest GPM readings to fix everything, or what do you comment about that?
Yeah, just the approach that Tim just did in looking at elevation. So if I had, for example, the largest GPM according to FEL, is that the first pipe I would fix? And I would say absolutely not. By looking and to borrow your term, looking at the hydrogeologics of where that pipe is located, I think we all want to go and take care of the low-hanging fruit first. So the biggest bang for the buck is going to be at the lowest elevation. And again, some people don't have the invert elevation to their manholes. Maybe it's a spot elevation. But where I'm looking at rehab and people not considering the elevation in it, and I'm not seeing any rehab that's done on the bottom third of that elevation, there's going to be a problem there. So I think having that data is coming in, it's good, but you really got to put that into perspective to the location, the area. The other side of that question, though, is also coming up with a GPM. This is kind of the holy grail. No one's ever done. There's a good reason nobody's ever done it, because it's hard to do. And we've really used this as an estimate, and we've applied basically a 1% gradient and a 1 foot head, where what Electro Scan does in low voltage is define the size of the hole. What is that size? And so by using the same calculation across all, we know the ones that are large or not. Fortunately, we had a great engineering firm, SAHO of St. Paul, have a wonderful city example in Racine, Wisconsin, that did flow monitoring before rehab and after, and did FEL before and after. And wouldn't you know, the percentage reduction was almost the same. The big difference is FEL was able on a pipe by pipe basis to know which one of those pipes had 100% reduction and some pipes which had a negative. So this isn't like negative oil pricing. Which pipes were actually leaking more? And we could actually look at the video and we could see those taps were not properly reinstated. So it's very good that we've done enough of these things to kind of see where that comes into play.
Well, yeah, I mean, like what we were kind of talking about before we went, live with the broadcast here. In many these diagnostics, quantification is yes what we all search for. But there's almost this qualifying aspect of magnitude, right? And so while the number may be affected by all sorts of parameters, that magnitude still causes you to ask, what's going on, right? I mean, so it's always a good indicator. The technology, the science seems sound of, there's something going on. I may not pinpoint the exact GPM to a decimal point, but I kind of need to take a look at it.
Look, great point. And the reality of this is, if I have bad pipes on one end, I've got a couple of good sections of pipe in the middle, and then I've got a bad pipe on the other end. If those pipes in the middle have very little to no leakage, we know if we just fix those two outer pipes, I'm going to push all of the infiltration down. I'm still percolating down to the ground. So when I draft up this project to actually go out to bid to fix, I'm going to do the whole area because I know that's what I've got to do. I know that infiltration is going to travel down to the next pipe. So the reality of this is I've got to have some good ops guys, some good CapEx engineers, really looking at these from a business angle and seeing what they want to do. But I think some of the costing that Innovyze has in their engine, in their back engine with the model, I think it's just a right time, right place for the solution.
Yeah. Well, again, we have tons of questions that are coming in. We'll make sure we answer all of these. Definitely, there's a whole topic here on laterals that they can indeed be a source of leaks. I had my fair share of some of that. So,
Now, is it your house or you personally?
Well, we're not going to go there.
Okay.
I personally have aging infrastructure, so yeah, but I do think there's some really good questions, some nuances to all this, and just like with Innovyze and our hydraulic modeling, we all of our calculations are rooted in science, but it comes to calibration. There are system anomalies, there are geographic anomalies, hydrogeologic anomalies, all that has to be configured. And that's why, honestly, we love having, consulting firms use our tools as well, because they have the expertise to kind of put, all those parameters together. So I know, I'm sure Sean's calling, telling us to call it quits, but I guess in all of this, these interesting times, COVID-19, you kind of started us off with that. I know Innovyze is definitely out there supporting our customers. We have lots of our utility, our municipal workers are actually, at home spending more time with our software, and so we're definitely, they're taking deep dives and learning a lot. How about Electro Scan? How are you guys doing during this whole COVID time?
Yeah, we actually were scanning CIPP this morning. We did an install last week in Tennessee, so we've been working. Everybody knows they've got their jobs fixed. I think it's the comfort level for this. But it's a very trying time, and internationally travel is been disrupted. So we just want everybody to be safe, stay at home, and follow the guidance of the health professionals.
Yep. Well, like I say, we've got lots of questions on pipe materials, service laterals, how accurate's the GPM, are you guys, how fast can you go? Lots of good questions that I know, again, just respect everyone's time. We allocated the hour, we're past that now. So we will answer each and every one of those questions. And if you have more, if you didn't have a chance to kind of submit your questions, you've got my email, Chuck's email, Tim's email. Give us a shout out. Let us know what's on your mind, and we're definitely Inflow Asset Planner. We're looking at all sorts of new technologies to bring in to give you all that additional information. And Tim's demonstrations are just going to get even more complex, and I can't wait. So anyway,
Good job,
I think.
Tim.
Yep. So thank you, Chuck, for being with us today. Always informative. I always enjoy your presentations. You always make us think. And Tim, great job showing software. And actually, so Sean, I know we're running a little bit over. I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of wrap it up and bring us home.
All right, sounds good. And I'd like to thank David, Chuck, and Tim for presenting today. And we would like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. If we did not get a chance to answer your questions today, we promise to get back to you with an answer. Thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again, guys.
Yeah. All right.